So a week ago I decided to try to create a Computerphile video completely from scratch, just using free software. And I don't mean free software where you're given it bundled with a computer or that you can download for free off the internet. I meant the GNU definition of free software. And the video that I'm trying to make, it's not actually published as I'm recording this, is with Matt Lee, who's a chap who used to work for the Free Software Foundation. So he's defined what free software is in their eyes, and it's all about freedom of speech as opposed to free as in money. Go and have a look at that video if you want to know more. But this thing that he said when I was interviewing him struck me. So it was this bit here.
So video editing isn't always the easiest thing to do with free software, but it can be done, right? People do edit video with free software all the time. And you know, video editing software is somewhat in its infancy as free software.
He said it, video editing software is somewhat in its infancy in free software terms. I discovered there are lots of free applications out there to do video editing on. Not all of them met my needs, and not all of them were reliable, and not all of them were that easy to install. So the other thing about this video that I'm making now, that I'm to try to explain the process I went through, I'm just trying to explain the process. I am not flying a flag for any specific bit of software. I'm not doing a tutorial on how to use those bits of software. Many of you guys out there know a lot more about those sorts of things than I do. All I tried to do was say, right, okay, I'm a user. I'm used to editing video. Let's see if I can do it with free software. So I was going to actually do this as a blog post and explain all of the things that I'd gone through. And I thought, well, no, we're Computerphile. We make computer videos. Let's see if the average user, i.e. me, can go out there and do something like video editing for free. So I prefer what I term as the blunt end of the camera, which is the bit without the lens on it. So apologies for me fluffing my way through this. But I did think it'd be worth us just explaining very briefly how we make or how we shoot a Computerphile video. That way you'll understand what I needed to be able to get out of the free software. What do we do when we shoot a Computerphile video? Well, we obviously use a camera, sometimes more than one camera. That's why there's another one here for the moment. We obviously need to record the audio of whoever it is we're interviewing. Now, most cameras will record at least 2 channels of audio, and we use one of those with this kind of microphone that you can see here on me. That's a lapel mic. That's the main microphone that we use. The other microphone is a microphone on the camera, often called the top mic. It's used as a backup. The idea is if something goes wrong with this and we don't notice it, we've at least got that to rely on. Now, when you come to edit, that means, ideally, you want to throw away the audio off that microphone. So first of all, we need the ability to be able to split out what's recorded as a stereo track into 2 mono tracks in order to choose which of those mono tracks we want people to be able to listen to. So that's one thing that's very important. The other thing is that the camera that I use is quite a high dynamic range, and that means it's able to capture a lot in the low lights, the shadows, the dark areas, what you're seeing here probably, and quite a lot in the highlights, so perhaps the light's coming down here or the light on the screen. When that comes to video, you then need to change the contrast to basically allow video to be able to see all of those things. So if you can see this shot here of Matt that I did, quite a snatched interview on the steps of the station, you can see it was very bright behind him, and well, his face was correctly exposed, but then he obviously had a black top on. So when I came to edit this originally, I would do something on the contrast to basically make that a bit more palatable. And the editing software I'm showing you here is Avid Media Composer. It's one of the industry standards for video editing. This is not free software. But to make this project a reality, what I decided to do was edit it in my normal way so that I knew what I was looking for, and then go and try and recreate that on a free piece of software. That way at least I wasn't learning the software and making the creative decisions at the same time. So in a moment I'll show you the free software that I ended up using, but I just wanted to explain something of the process. So on this video editing software here, we've got our source pictures, and we've got what we're going to do as our edit, and then down at the bottom is what's called a timeline. Most people will know what one of those is. In this video editing software, it's split into V for video tracks and A for audio tracks. And you can see that it's fairly straightforward. Wherever there's a change in a block here, it's an edit point, and some things where I've floated something over the top. And right at the end, at the promo section here, you can see quite a lot going on. That's because of several layers of video going to make that. There's each of the 4 little subscreens, there's the background, there's the text on top of there. So that's quite a lot of video going on there. This Windows 7 machine, which runs the editing software, Also runs After Effects and various other bits and pieces like Photoshop and audio editing for when I need to do that. But it is kept completely separate from anything else. It does have a network link to the rest of my system, but I have this machine here as an admin machine for uploading to the internet, for checking emails, etc, etc. So what I've ended up doing is the video edit has happened on my admin machine, which has really slowed me down in a lot of respects. But this machine here is running Ubuntu 12.04, but the whole idea of this came about the fact that on top of all of this I have a backup machine that I thought I might be able to rejuvenate this old machine that I just have for backup purposes, put something on it that might actually work and just be a video editor. In the end, that went to pot and I ended up using my admin machine because it's a bit more powerful. I'll go through those specs of the machines in a moment, but suffice to say that my admin machine used to be my main machine running Avid. It's a quad-core, fairly decent machine from a few years ago with 4 gigs of RAM, easily able to handle HD video. So the other machine, the old machine, which is on a keyboard and monitor and mouse switch here, this is where I started this experiment on this machine here, which is probably going to finish the experiment as well, and I'll kind of come to that in a moment. I tried to put on OpenSUSE. Twice I tried to load OpenSUSE onto it. Installation failed for no apparent reason. Well, obviously there was a reason, but it didn't let me know what it was. Debian, I thought that would be a good bet, so I put Debian on it. Got the black screen of death that I'm calling it. A mouse pointer you could see, but nothing else. Tried installing that 3 or 4 times. Spent a lot of time on Debian, typing things into the command prompt, terminal that I could get to, using Google to try and find different ways of trying to get graphics drivers to make my system work. We didn't get anywhere with it. Went for Gnusense, because it was recommended by the Free Software Foundation. That's what it's running at the moment. It's done quite well on that, but I didn't just go straight to that. I also tried Dynabolic, which I thought had great potential. That's a fantastic looking thing, which I've still got the CD for because I plan to use or try again. Comes with Sinilera, which is a piece of software which looked quite promising. So could only get it to run off the CD, couldn't get it to run off the hard drive. That's probably my fault. Okay, so you get this splash screen at the top, and then if you go into sound and video, you'll find an application called Sinilera, and I believe you can run this on different distros. So Sinilera loads up, and looks very promising. I did have some problems with it though. I couldn't seem to get audio to work, and output was a problem. So some of the things we were coming out with was this, less than 2 minutes long, yet nearly 2 gigabytes in size, and obviously some kind of problem with the colors there. And this, which looked really promising, but again mute, even outputting an MP3 file, was sadly mute. So what I did think at that point was it's a promising bit of software, and what I decided to do was try and run it on one of the more powerful machines, the admin machine, or even my main Win 7 machine, because it would have run off the CD. So it wouldn't run up on either my admin machine, which is quite a decent machine, Core 2 quad NVIDIA video card, or this, which is a Xeon, an Intel Xeon machine, 2.8 quad core processor. So very decent spec machines, and that's where I went off to try Ubuntu. And then I got to a point where I thought, why am I bothering with Ubuntu on this when I've already got Ubuntu on a more powerful machine, which is why I ended up making the video on my admin machine. The graphics on Computerphile, that's all of this stuff you can see here, was all created in Adobe After Effects and Photoshop, but I've recreated them for the video that I put out last. I recreated them with GIMP. I know they're not animated, and I probably could have done that if I'd had more time to work in things like Blender, which is another free piece of software. Unfortunately, I've spent a week on this now, and the biggest bottleneck, apart from learning the software, has been finding software that will work. Most of my machines here have got, in fact all of these 3 machines have got NVIDIA video cards in them. Unfortunately, NVIDIA and Linux don't always play that well together. There are ways around it. You guys know lots more about that than I do. What I don't have time for is spending hours and hours and hours trying to find the right thing to make it work. So this is probably the whole point of the exercise in one nutshell. The guys over at GNU and the Free Software Foundation and Matt, who I spoke to, are very, very keen on the idea of free doesn't just mean how much it costs. But for me, the trade-off is between how much time it takes to get it working and how much it costs, as opposed to the freedom of speech thing. So I understand the point of freedom of speech. I think it's fantastic. I like the idea of it. And I think there's room for both things in this world. So what did I do in GIMP? Well, I created the Computerphile graphics from scratch. Very impressed with it. Very close to what I'm used to using in things like Photoshop. Perhaps they don't look quite exactly the same, but I used GIMP to make the thumbnail for the video, which is this here. I also used GIMP to make the start plate, which is binary background with the Computerphile logo on it. I was able to do everything I wanted to do in GIMP, not quite as quickly and easily. In Photoshop, to deselect something is Control and D, and in GIMP that duplicates it. So I did that a few times. I had lots and lots of copies of things running around. All the while I was trying various bits of software, I was also tweeting about my progress, because while trying things on my old banging machine, I actually started running with Kdenlive on the admin machine, just as a sort of run two experiments at the same time. It allowed me to start trying different distros on one machine while I could also make a start on the edit, which is probably why I ended up with Kdenlive, because I got a bit more familiar with it. But I did get a tweet from somebody saying try Pitivy, which again looked really promising. It looked a bit like Kdenlive, but a little bit clearer on what was going on with the audio. And when I ran clips, it was really promising. Fantastic. The moment I put anything on the timeline though, it locks up. So the timeline looks like it works. You can trim the tracks, move them around, but I can't see anything and can't play anything on the timeline. So I did get a little bit disappointed with this. I mean, it appears to do what I want it to do, but nothing really seems to work. Playing doesn't work. The other thing someone suggested was using Blender. Now, I've experimented with Blender for graphics, 3D graphics for Computerphile. Haven't yet got competent enough to produce something for a film, but I can see how powerful it is and what a wonderful tool it could be. So I've fired up Blender, went to the video editing layout, and just looked at it and went, I don't know where to start. And of course, by this time, I'm starting to use Kdenlive, getting quite comfortable with it. So I will give this some more time. I believe there's some really good tutorials online, so I will check those out. So opening up Kdenlive just to have a look at the software itself and just to see what it was I was trying to achieve. It looks pretty similar to Avid. You've got a timeline at the bottom, you've got the source and record windows in Avid. In this case we've just got one window, but it's tabbed. You've got what they call a clip and a project monitor. And then your media at the side here, which is kind of where I keep my media in Avid. So the timelines look pretty similar. So what did I need to achieve? Well, I talked about the dynamic range of the image, and I also talked about the audio. So in Avid here you can see one single audio track, but in Kdenlive, if we just make that a bit larger, you'll notice that it's a stereo track. That's what the two different waveforms within the one block means. So there was no apparent way to split that out into two separate waveforms to get my different left and right, or channel 1 and channel 2 as I referred. What that means is that those two microphones are mixed together. Now, why is that a problem? Well, if you let both of those go out and mix together, you can have an echoey effect. Basically, if these two microphones are picking up the same source, i.e. my voice in this instance, but from slightly different distances away, this microphone's here, that microphone's over there, and as a result you get echoey. Also, that's a directional microphone, so it's pointing over my shoulder, so in this instance it's not so much of an issue, but certainly when I was recording Matt, it was pointing over his shoulder at the traffic, so really do want to get rid of that audio. That was a problem on Kdenlive because of this stereo pair. What I did was I chose the effect called audio channels copy channels and allowed it to copy channel 1 to channel 2. And that, I think, is where the problem lies in the clicking audio that everyone has heard on the right-hand channel of the free software video. Whether it's me not knowing exactly what the settings are or a slight bug, I'm not entirely sure, but that's what you'll find is going on. I'm basically wanting to lose channel 2 and just have channel 1. So if I were to go back to the original source media here in Avid, for instance, and listen to it mixed.
It's not free software because, first of all, you can't run iTunes for any purpose.
Huge amounts of traffic noise. But if I lose channel 2...
But it's not free software because, first of all, you can't run...
We can hear Matt quite clearly. If we were to lose channel 1, just to give you the difference, this is what the top mic's doing.
It's not free software because, first of all...
You can hear him. You can hear him speaking, but it's quite... well, it's not quite as nice.
It's different. Adobe's really sort of tying you.
Unfortunately, when I did what I thought would give the same result over here in Kdenlive, we got this. Now, initially, that's just a playback issue, and when you export it, channel 1, or the left-hand channel, is absolutely fine, and channel 2 has got a few clicks on it. Unfortunately, it took so long to export the file and put it together that I only really found this out just before I was going to go live with the video. Now, many of you out there might think, well, you need to fix it and sort it out, but I'd already spent a week on this video, and I just thought this actually reflected reality. I've no agendas to try and kind of get across here. This is just me trying to show what happened to me, trying to do what I need to do. The other thing that I needed to do as well was sort out this difference, this dynamic range, this picture difference. And I found some really good tools in Kdenlive for that. You've got the input and output black levels. What I didn't quite like was that here they were just arbitrary numbers, 0 to 1,000, where I didn't really know what that meant. So I was changing things like the black level, which you can hopefully see if I come out of the way. And what I wanted to do was just to take that within a threshold, where in Avid what you would do is you would use the color correction tool, and you would use a thing called the RGB parade, which is this thing here, and you need to get things within certain limits on that scope. So Kdenlive, I keep saying it's a really good piece of software because I think it is. It's just a problem with workflow, and the workflow that I use didn't fit with Kdenlive. So there are lots of people out there saying, I use Kdenlive, or I use Blender, or I use Pitavi, or I use whatever, and it works fine. Well, it might work fine on your hardware and with the things that you want to do. Even you want to do a massively complicated video edit, but you haven't decided to lose one of your channels of audio, that might be the only reason that mine has not worked quite so well. So hopefully that gives people out there a sense of what I think went wrong on this as far as the audio is concerned. I have heard clicking like that occurring when audio is being transcoded from 40 or converted from 48 kilohertz to 44.1 kilohertz before, so perhaps that's what's going on. There aren't many options in the copy channels effect, so I can't be sure of that. Audio wasn't the only problem I had though with Kdenlive. After I'd got the edit ready and I thought I was good to go, I then had to try and get it out of the system, and exporting was my next big hurdle. I started work on the free software film on Thursday the 6th of November. I possibly started installing software on Wednesday the 5th. This is a list basically of all the different export tests. What you'll notice is lots of these have 0 bytes because they failed or crashed. Some of them are only a few K, which for a video file is either incomplete or hideously compressed. And then occasionally you see one that's what I call a decent size, a 15 meg file for 30 seconds. And what I'd found over the course of experiments and going literally through the list of options on export was that only some of them worked, and only some of them worked with video. So for instance, some of them would only give me audio with those wonderful clicks that we all know about now. So that's just the visualizer in the movie player. Some of them would give me what I wanted, but the quality was not very good. So again, I'll give you a close-up of this, but it's very, very blocky and not good enough. I finally hit upon an export setting that worked, and it was this one, and this is what you ended up with.
Other software is that other software is designed to...
Unfortunately, it wouldn't render at this level of quality, or this quality in this file format, for more than about 40 seconds without crashing. So 40-second segments were about its limit. I tried 60 seconds, it crashed. So I settled on choosing 30-second segments of the film, and I output the film in 30-second segments, and then I had to knit it back together again afterwards. The original film that I've got here that I edited as a guide, I've exported as well to put up as an unlisted video alongside so people can see the difference. And that took slightly longer than 7 or 8 minutes to export from Avid, the entire thing. This is 20 minutes for every 30-second section. So a 6-minute film is 12 sections, 20 minutes each. You can do the math. It's taken quite a few hours to just get it out of the system, really. And that's me being kind, saying 20 minutes. These are more than 20 minutes, plus I have to mark up the sections frame accurately and make sure that I get exactly the right part. And of course I'm then going to have to put it all together afterwards, upload it, and hopefully you guys have already seen the results of that. I've got a piece of software here called MKV Merge. What it is able to do is put files together as long as they've been encoded the same and stitch them together without re-encoding them, and that's really important in anything to do with video, because every time you re-encode something you A, lose quality, and B, have to wait a long time. I did cheat a little bit as well. The format that comes out of this camera here is a format called AVC HD, and it's very heavily compressed. And if you remember the film we did with Tom Scott on animated GIFs, he talked about the idea of size, as in size of a file, versus ability to play that file. And the idea that GIFs are very, very large because they're dead easy to play, whereas a smaller, more compressed file isn't as easy to play. Well, it certainly comes into its own with this as well. And what it means is that heavily compressed video like AVC HD that you're being recorded in, I'm being recorded in now by that camera, is very difficult to play back. My old computer wouldn't even be able to play back the raw files, never mind edit them. So what I did was I transcoded them and cheated a little bit and made it into HDV, which is a slightly easier to handle format. I won't go into the technical side of all that right now. You can Google it, but hopefully this has given you a little bit of an insight as to what it's meant to try and make one of these videos with free software. So get out there if you've got time, and if you've got hardware but you're strapped for cash, download these bits of software because they're good. They're really good, and people are putting time and effort into making them work. All I would say is don't expect it to work out of the box like a boxed piece of software. Don't expect to be able to basically take it back to the shop if it doesn't do exactly what you're expecting it to. But that's the real trade-off, isn't it? It's free.